I looked for this video on YouTube for months and I couldn't find it, so I decided to create it. This is for the people who have lost a loved one violently and are still trying to make peace with grief and move on. This is my story. Growing up in London as a later millennial, knife crime was something that had always been an echo, but as I got older, it's like it became closer to home. It's not very often that the incident that killed your loved one when it comes to knife crime is an isolated event. Not everyone has the luxury of being able to say that their loved one was innocent. My nephew's story is complicated. Watching someone you love go down a negative path and not having the tools to take them out of it is like a process of grief within itself. For a long time, my nephew's life was tumultuous. And till this day, I can't work out why. There were some triggers, but I just remember when he was born, seeing this beautiful, fat baby, so chunky. My sister's first child. And she was so happy. He quickly grew out of that chubbiness and became tall and slim. People always perceived him as older than he was, and that actually was something that caused him a lot of trouble. Things weren't perfect. Nothing ever is. People always ask when it comes to young men who are going down that wrong path, where are their fathers? My nephew had his father in his life. His mum and his dad's relationship collapsed in his infancy, but his dad was in his life and his dad loved him. He was super bright as a child, like super smart, super funny, super charismatic, and I don't know, I feel like having his dad die under mysterious circumstances till this day, we don't know the actual cause of death, was something that left too many unanswered questions for a 9-year-old, played upon his mental health. One minute his superhero was there and the next minute he was gone. And I remember during that season, that bubbly boy, the light of any room he walked in, it's like he got consumed by a dark cloud. And we tried, we brought him to places of counsel, hooked him up with youth mentors, took him to Afrocentric youth clubs so that he knew the power of Black people and Black history, and tried to remind him to honor his brothers. But when he got victimized at around 10 years old, just riding home from school, he just got some independence. And someone took a knife to him and stole his bike. It's like at that moment he decided, rather than be the victim, be the villain. And to see him take on that villain energy of wanting to be the baddest thing around, and then to be recruited by older boys with their own trauma into doing all the wrong things. It was hard to deal with, but as a community, as a family, we done our best. It just wasn't good enough. I'm 10 years older than my nephew, so as I was growing up, so was he. He witnessed my adolescence during his infancy, and during his adolescence, he witnessed me becoming an adult. It's hard to admit this, but my family, like so many other Black British Caribbean families, carried generational wounds that hadn't fully healed. Things that don't always have names but show up in how people cope, in the choices they make, and what gets normalized without anyone meaning it to be. And if I'm really honest, even I can look back at younger versions of myself and see that the choices I made, the people I chose to be around, the things that I thought were okay at the time, perhaps painted a picture for him about what was acceptable. We loved him, but love doesn't always look like what a child needs it to be. I remember for years, like, we were living on eggshells with him, worried about him, worried about what he could possibly do to somebody or what somebody could do to him. I remember the endless trips to the police station or to the hospital when he had been stabbed. As a teenager, I mean in like 14, 15 years old, getting caught up in county lines, having to pay blackmail fees to get him back from being kidnapped. It's easy to judge and ask, how did a young person, a child, have so much freedom? Well, he had a mother studying to become a professional and to enhance their lives through getting a degree and a better job. A grandmother working her 9 to 5. An auntie off at uni. A family just doing their best to survive. He snuck out of houses, didn't come back home from school, walked out of school and found his way to places that shouldn't have concerned him. Over the years, I watched my sister's health deteriorate. There were so many occasions where she placed herself in front of a blade, trying to save her son from being attacked. For anyone not from the UK, I just want to show what kind of knives are being used on our streets. Gone are the days of the kitchen knives. These knives are made to unalive. The question is, who's selling them? And why are they so accessible to children? So when he became older and he ended up in young offenders, for a minute it allowed us to breathe, to know that he was safe and that he didn't hurt anyone and no one hurt him. There was a grieving process that I had to go through while he was alive. When he was growing out of that adolescence and becoming a man, I had to let go because legally, what could I do? I'm sharing this story, my story, his story with you because knife crime is devastating and affecting many families across the UK, but it's disproportionately affecting Black people. Far too many of our young people, especially our young boys, are growing up where it seems that carrying a knife and responding to conflict in that way has become normalized. And it leaves us as a community devastated. It's easy to judge and place blame, but the truth is more complicated. Some young people die to knife crime as the perfect victim. But the unspoken truth is that some of us lose loved ones caught up in that toxic cycle. There's a lot of shame associated with that, which can sometimes let the grief feel lonely and alienating. In my case, I'm grateful that my nephew's bad behaviors didn't go to that place of no return. I always believed that he would come back to himself. I must say, with all this, I am grateful that he died in a happy place. He died in a space of change, yes, although imperfect. In many ways, as a family, he was doing things that we could be proud of him for again. His mum was able to embrace him, hug him and kiss him again. And yeah, although my nephew was changing his behaviors, that music that he was making was just, it was continuing the narrative that ended his life. And I am grateful that he didn't get the chance to become successful because I have no doubt that he would have made it. I'm grateful that I learned from his friends that at his time of death, he was actually being a peacemaker. I'm grateful that unlike my nephew's perpetrators, he is free. Not in the traditional sense. They got away. His perpetrators got away because, according to the police, they were overwhelmed with knife violence cases on that day and young people who have lost their life during that same day to knife crime. even that in itself just shows that the problem is widespread and it's affecting so many people. It's sad that this isn't my only nephew lost to knife crime. This one is just biological. The guilt. I feel guilty for not being there, not only during his death, but not being there at times in his life that maybe if I was there, he would have made a positive change. I feel guilty about continuing my relocation journey, leaving my family, leaving my sister in the hardest time of her life. I feel guilty. I feel guilty for not knowing how to protect him from himself and how to lead him back to the light of who he was. I remember when my sister, it's her child, so she saw these changes in him before anybody else did. And I remember she would bring up stuff, and at times we would just shake it off he's just growing, it's fine. But there's times that I feel guilty, for ignoring her cries for help. I feel guilty that he's not here. I feel guilty in part for his reputation, the legacy he left behind. But what can I do about it? I continued my relocation journey because losing him showed me how fragile life is. And I recognize that staying broken, living in grief, will just allow me to continue that cycle of toxicity. Healing isn't selfish, it's necessary. I refuse to let the people who took my nephew's life away from him take my future away from me as well. And I believe that this applies to all of us. When we heal, we become better parents, better friends, better advocates for our communities. Every healed person has the opportunity to interrupt cycles of violence and trauma. We may not be able to save everyone, but together we can create communities where less people actually need saving. We live in a world now where things are digital. I have access to counseling online and all the resources I need. In this environment in Ghana, I'm able to have a peaceful nervous system. New experiences ignite my passion and my joy, and it allows me to live in purpose, which I believe essentially adds to my healing. If you're going through something similar, I encourage you to rebuild your broken pieces, to make your life a living dedication to your loved one who no longer has their life. If you've made it to the end of this video, I just want to give you a special thank you. I also want to invite you to join the Telegram community using the QR code. I intend to curate discussions about healing, becoming our greatest versions, and living passionately. Until next time, take care of yourself. I am Adanish. This is Art Alchemy. Peace on the increase.